So in my last video, I went over the release of Margaery into the recruitment pass and the legendary hero decree. And through this, I imagine a fair few more people will, over time, over the next few months, start to be increasing their Margaery rarities to the point where she's more usable to players than she has been previously. Since, of course, at a previous price point, most players would have either not had her unlocked or potentially at best had her at grey or green maybe. And as I touched on in my previous video, particularly with recent changes to Rebels, Margaery has become a bit more prominent in the most meta Rebel leader formations against Cavalry specifically. And I was just going to do a video to go over the exact reasons why that is. So the primary reason behind this is her might recovery ability, which is her third ability here, Favor of the Rose. Every 2 attacks, 3 random allies recover 200 might. What might is the little yellow bar underneath a commander's health bar in fights where guard skills are used. Think of it similar to rage costs in Siege of Winterfell or All Out War. We have that little bar. As soon as it hits 1000, the skill will cast, and then it will reset, and you'll just keep repeating that process until the fight ends. And there's a few things that will increase might recovery, which will be attacking or taking damage, and then obviously special effects like this, which can further increase it. So the simple idea at play is you surround Margaery with very high value active abilities, which either deal huge amounts of damage or increase damage by a huge amount, and then you hugely buff the amount of times those actives can cast. So historically, Margaery has been a bit awkward for Rebels because Enzo has been so fundamental to all the top Rebel formations, but Margaery's just a bit too much damage reduction to ever have his health drop low enough to get enough value from his passive ability where he gains damage the lower his health is. And Enzo is, of course, still good. He's still in most of the top-tier Rebel formations. But now these recent changes, and also with the addition of level 6s, especially for those level 6s, Enzo isn't always the best in those situations. So the way these meta Margaery formations will look will be something like this. We have Margaery as tank. She will never die. She has too much damage reduction for that. And then you surround her with these high damage actives. So Annie's active doesn't do damage itself, but it's a further damage increaser for everything else. Theon has the highest damaging active in the game, over a 40-second fight at least, because of how it stacks passive attack onto him until the end of a fight. Julian's does massive burst damage. Jaime the same, Arslan the same. Daenerys, if you have her in a decent rarity, is better than any of these against Cav especially as well. And this will work really good against level 5s, against level 6s. The best route is slotting Egbert into Annie's spot there, and for me at least, this consistently 6 shots. Level 6 Cav Rebels, if you have Daenerys, it can quite consistently 5-shot them, and potentially 4-shot if you get a bit lucky. And you obviously will not find Enzo compositions that even have a remote chance of 4-shotting a level 6 Cav Rebel, and the value is just all tied into multiplying the damage up from all your other commanders. I will disclaim this as saying, obviously, Enzo can still work, and you can still get very good damage out of Enzo compositions, but for level 6s, Margaery's definitely better, and also Margaery can be ran at lower rarities than Enzo can in this situation, which now with the recruitment pass can potentially allow newer and smaller players better formations for these level 5 Cavs. If I go into a report now, and watch one of the videos just to show exactly what I mean about this might regeneration ability. So the ability you're going to want to be looking out for is Favor of the Rose. It will come up with a little pop-up every time it casts, and it's every 2 times Margaery does a normal attack. So you'll see here in just a second the first one, the actives cast, right there, Favor of the Rose. And now it will consistently proc about every 3 seconds for the entire rest of the fight, and every time it procs, you'll see an additional jump up with these yellow bars at the bottom, which is how the other commanders will cast their active abilities. So when you compare this with Margaery to without Margaery, Favor of the Rose will cast 13 times across a fight, I've noticed, which is 13 times 600 for a total of 7,800 might recovery, which is almost an additional 1.5 actives for every single commander in the fight. When you look at that as a direct comparison, you will notice that where, say, Theon will cast one additional active in the space of the 40 seconds you're fighting when comparing it to an Enzo composition, and he'll also be casting his actives earlier, which means you're getting higher uptime on his increased damage output with his stacking attack buff, and it will be very, very noticeable. So if you do have Margaery, if you're buying into Margaery now with the recruitment pass, give it a try on Cav Rebels at least. If it is exceedingly low rarity, at say grey-green, you can swap her and Annie's positions, and you may find a bit more success with that. But for me personally, all the testing I've done, the Margaery compositions have been better for me than Enzo compositions, pretty consistently on every account I've tried it on.